Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Grant Show. This is our inaugural episode, and we're just getting started here on LinkedIn Live. And I'm very fortunate to be here with my co host, Alex Abbott and Mark Sabatini. Hey, guys, how are you
Hey,
today?
doing good, Grant. A little under the weather here. Traveling. I'm in Las Vegas for the AWS reInvent show, so don't mind my voice today.
No worries. It's always good to see you. And it is that time of year where people are traveling and not feeling well, but we hope you have a great time in Las Vegas after the show today. Alex, how are you? Where are you today?
I'm very good, thanks, Grant. I'm in sunny Portugal, South Portugal today. I'm
Okay,
I,
jealous,
I'm I'm
jealousy face.
I'm not feeling under the weather, but I do feel for Mark with all of that travel and especially being in Vegas. I'm somewhat jealous, given that the Formula One Grand Prix was there a little over a week ago.
Oh,
Yep,
that's so funny. I want pictures of the sphere as well, Mark. That's going to be fun. I want to see what the big face or whatever's on it. So you'll have to do that for us.
you got it.
Well, again, I'm Dr. Grant Van Elbrick, and I'm the host of the show with my great co-host here as well too. And here in this show, what we want to do is we want to set the stage for all leaders around the world to come and join us and have a great discussion. The focus of our discussion is going to be on leadership, change, and coaching. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in, these all intertwine with every single business and organization that you see across the world. So, what kind of leadership foundations are you experiencing and expressing, good and bad? We also want to talk about change management from the organization's perspective, but also I want to share the insights in what we're seeing, the busy trends that are happening around the world with a shift towards personal change management and how we can actually start to make change work. And I think that's a focus of all leaders, right? How do we do that? And we'll also talk about the costs associated with failed change initiatives. And we also want to talk about coaching. We three here are pracademics and we believe in coaching as our leadership styles and foundations. And we want to talk about that as the show continues onward. So, for right now, what we'd like you to do, if you're tuning in and listening to us here on LinkedIn Live, go ahead and drop your name and the city where you're from so that we can follow along with you. And we hope that you enjoy the show. If you'd like to be a leader on the show or a guest on the show, that can happen too. So make sure you reach out to Mark or myself or to Alex and just let us know who you are and what interests you and what you might like to speak about when it comes to leadership, change, and coaching within your business and opportunity. So for now, again, I'm Dr. Grant Van Elbrick, and I have spent the last 25 plus years in hospitality, in global hospitality and service around the world. And in the last 10 years, I've focused on the academic side, looking at sales transformation, leadership, and how do you lead transformation and change. And so I went into academia. I'm currently serving as the CEO of Scared So What Limited here in London. And I'm also on the academic side, a fellow of Cranfield University, the Institute of Sales Professionals, the Integrity Center, and also the Institute of Training and Occupational Learning. I know that sounds a lot because it is. It's a lot to keep up with, but it keeps me included into my ear to the ground of what's happening throughout academia and business practices around the world. But I'd like to introduce my first host, who is a long term friend, and he was the first person certified in the Scared So What methodology. And he is an existing partner of mine. Let's say hello to Alex Abbott.
Thanks, Grant. That's very kind. Yeah, the first certified 3 years ago or so.
Almost 4 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, a little bit of background on me. I was thinking about this before the show. 33 years in sales.
Mhm.
I know I don't
That's
look
a
old
lot.
enough, but
That's a lot. Well, I see the white, the
yeah,
bearded sales guy.
yeah. My first job was Kirby vacuum cleaner sales 33 years ago, knocking doors. Um, 10 years ago, I was building a business, a go-to-market function, a business that grew to $22 million ARR within a four-year period from scratch. And after leaving the corporate world, I set up Sapiro. And this was 5 years ago, and about 3 years ago, uh, I realized that, at the end of the day in sales, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And so why do, 99% of go-to-market leaders that I speak to create systems that almost do the opposite of gearing up those teams for relationship development. And
So true.
I now spend all of my time, developing the conversation operating system as a methodology, as an approach to helping go-to-market teams generate conversations, meaningful conversations with their target audience. And more recently have introduced digital learning as well as AI-powered guidance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? And you and I knew there was a reason why we identified so long ago. Actually, my first vacuum cleaner I bought from a door-to-door salesman, and it was a Kirby, and it was
Excellent.
in Cleveland, Ohio. So, damn good vacuum cleaner. It's just amazing to use. And wouldn't you know it, you would be one who have sold it as well too. So it's so good to have you. And if you haven't met Alex yet, please reach out and connect with him on LinkedIn. We've used him at businesses that I've run and worked at in the past. And he's a brilliant educator, a brilliant instructor who's got his ear and mind to the ground right now, which is what is happening in modern sales and selling socially. And he just does such a great system. And I know that. No, I know it. Our teams have actually enjoyed your classes and your coursework, and it's really valuable. So it's great to have you as a co-host.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I would be remiss if, another partner, which is just an amazing guy, Mark Sabatini. He's also certified in Scared So What in our programs, and he's a partner of Alex and I as well. So Mark, would you like to say hello?
I would. Thank you, Grant. And Alex, that was such a great lead in for us co-hosts here. And again, for the audience, I apologize for my voice. Alex, you're an old timer. 33 years. It's crazy in sales, so I have 30 years in sales. So I can call you a senior when it comes to that. But what we've all experienced, and what I like about the fact that we've got, leadership and change hand in hand is that, we all go through change no matter what it is in our lives. And the way through that is leadership, and whether that's the people around us or people we reach out to help, someone within our family, ourselves. But more importantly, what I'll get to talk about a little bit later is really just having a structured process in place that puts the guardrails up, because change could just take you out into all different places. And why I bring that up, my background story that I wanted to let the audience know about today, the leadership that really formed my approach to leadership was back when I was, 15 years old and joined the local volunteer fire department. And then, at 16, I became an emergency medical technician in my hometown on the volunteer ambulance corps. And there's nothing, that tests you and pressures you more for your leadership ability than when you run into an emergency situation. Mm-hmm. And, so what really has over the years, what I've worked on and why I do what I do, it's really to solve problems, to triage situations, very quickly come up with the best answer to move the process forward. And ultimately it's about helping people. But we can't do that unless we have a structured process in place. Right now, I'm running a consultancy where I'm helping companies to transform their go-to-market to drive predictable and scalable revenue. And most of the problems businesses are having today in driving incremental revenue to really go back to the foundation of their go-to-market. So that's the area that I've been focused on and what I'm doing today to help companies deal with change and also help them lead through this next generation that's upon us with AI coming into everything that we do.
It's such a great skill sets that you hold. I can identify so well what you've said. When we have situations of emergencies that happen, that's where leadership truly becomes vulnerable, and where we can really see who you are and how you're leading within instances of change. And that's why here on this show, we wanted to talk about these three areas. And thanks, Mark, and thanks, Alex, for coming along and agreeing to be our co-host on this show. We'll have, hopefully, many more episodes that'll come through. We'd like to invite members and leaders from various organizations around the world to tune in, reach out to us, and join in on the show, and be a guest of our show so that we can bring real-life scenarios to the table and have great discussions. So again, the intersecting conversations we want to talk about are about leadership, good, bad, the ugly, everything in between. And why is that important to me? For me and to my friends here, the reason it's so important is through my research in academia. In my PhD, I looked at the foundations of leadership. And what we see so much taught throughout organizations and training systems today is the archetypes, and that's the structures. Do you want to be a relational leader? Do you want to be an emotional leader? What type of a leader do you want to be? But rarely do we talk about the foundations of leadership. And these are the principles that we should see and have in every single organization. And what are those? Those are transactional and transformational. And what are the tools that allow us to become transformational? And what we'll talk about as we go on through the show and through the series, transactional leadership is 76% of your life spent. Why? Because it's easy. It's about you. When you get up in the morning, when you put on your clothes, when you decide what to eat, when you go to work, everything that you start out your day is about you. And so when people come and interrupt your day, it's so easy for you to just tell them what to do. And that is transactional leadership. It's a foundation of tell. But what happens when you practice that way? Well, you're losing out on ideation, you lose out on followership, and you actually, if you remain in transactional leadership, you're setting the stage for high attrition. And that's not where we want to be. So we want to talk about the foundations of leadership. We also want to talk about change. And Mark and Alex and I, we all know that change impacts every single business, every single operation, and every single person in the world. So we want to talk about that. We want to expose the high costs of change failure within organizations because people are not speaking about that. If you're a CFO, you should be calculating these costs. You should be looking at engagement and failed change initiatives so that we can measure them and understand how to make them more successful. And if you're a CEO, you yourself should know how do you lead effective change? And also, what does transformation look like within your organization? Because if you don't have those skill sets, how are you expected to lead them, right? And we need to talk about that. And in this show, we want to be vulnerable. We want to be real, and we want to have real conversations of how we can grow ourselves and our friends and colleagues around the world. And I think one last final thing that really across everything we're trying to do here is a society of coaching, organizations that facilitate coaching and understand traditional business coaching versus sports-related coaching. One is about telling. The other one is about creating ideation and space to think. And so these are the three areas that we really want to weave into our discussions throughout each show. And hopefully this is of interest to you. And so what I'd like you to do is just to think about which pillar that I've mentioned to you is the strongest and which one is the weakest within your organization. And if you'd like to drop it into the chat, feel free to do it. And we'll hopefully try to address that for you and have a conversation about that. So
on
yeah,
that
Yeah.
note,
Yeah.
let me just give a shout out to Eric Benedict
Oh, thank you.
from Miami. I don't know if you know Eric.
I know Eric very well. It's great to see you, Eric. Thanks for joining with us.
He's dropped into the comments.
Yeah. Oh, he's amazing. He works together. Let's give a shout out because we can to Shannon McKee, and I know you know her as well too.
Yeah.
Shannon is the president of Access Cruise, and Eric is one of her senior leaders there as well too. Brilliant people. They're leading in all things cruise and hospitality from America and around the world. And they're also certified in Scared So What. And I believe they just went through your course. Is that right, Alex?
Yeah, Shannon did. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Eric didn't, but Shannon did. And thank you very much for bringing us together. I think we can do some great things.
Absolutely. And if Shannon did, I'm sure that Eric will hear about it. So, let's go ahead and get our conversation started for today. I think Mark's going to lead us and give us a spotlight on predictable go-to-market and what that means. Mark, would you like to give us an intro into that?
Absolutely. I'm going to jump in, and we are still a little bit ahead of time here, Grant. If I could just pause us for a second, go back for the audience, and just leave them with one more time back through those three pillars. And, maybe you give an example of, strongest weakness and just an example, because maybe it'll prompt some thinking from the audience to put their thoughts
Absolutely.
together.
Yeah. So the three pillars again are leadership, change, and coaching. And I can show you with some of the businesses that I've worked in here recently across the UK, I have found that many businesses are actually weakest in change. And why is that? Because change management, and this is what my research is all upon, my master's and my doctoral research, change and leadership, is to focus on, you have to understand, it's been 100 years of organizational change management. And organizational change management in design is transactional at best. And that statement is going to offend a lot of change practitioners. But what I've also found is that the highest resistance I receive in this work is from certified change management practitioners. And why is that? It's not because what they're doing is wrong. It's not because organizational change management is wrong. The reason it has such high failure rates is because we fail to include you, the individual. And so this is where change management, while valuable, extremely valuable and extremely necessary, is highly exposed and highly vulnerable because you as people, and until I spoke with you, Mark, and you, Alex, we're all in the same page. Whenever I speak with people, I ask them, have you ever been taught how to manage change for yourself? And the answers are, what? What was it before I met you, Alex and Mark?
Yeah, no.
No, right? And you guys are 30
Yeah.
plus year leaders in business and organizations. You were going to say, Alex?
Well, we sort of we learn the hard way.
Yeah.
We're taught by those that also haven't been formally trained on personal change, and so a phrase that not constantly, but often rings through my mind when I think about those times is you're either on the bus or off the bus.
Yeah. Right. Well, and how many leaders have we experienced in our lives? This is why we talk about leadership as well, too. And for the audience listening, how many leaders have you had that you absolutely would never follow? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many leaders have you ever had that you thought, that's how I would never do it? Right?
Yeah.
We have a lot of lessons learned on how to not lead, but we have very few lessons learned on how we should be leading, and especially when it comes to change management. As you rightfully said, and as we've shared, none of us had been taught in school, in church or religious settings, in familial settings, or at work how to manage change for ourselves. So there's a reason why the cost of failed change in the UK is 340 billion. So it's a big opportunity for us to talk about.
Yeah, certainly. And Alex touched on a good point, as well as you did, Grant, about leadership, right? It's up to our leaders to do the coaching. And if the leaders don't know how to deal with change, how are they going to coach their team through that change that they're experience at that time? So, it goes hand in hand. That's why I really like the 3 pillars and why I wanted to make sure that we came back to this. But certainly, if you have a weak leader, you really start to wonder, where's the next break in the chain going to come from. The same thing can happen if you have a very strong leader, but nobody really doing any coaching and understanding, where the next step is for the individual, where the next step is for the business. So it's interesting how those impact each other.
Well, let's ask you, Mark and Alex, for yourselves. What is a great experience in your industry? What you've experienced over for leadership change and or coaching? Strongest or weakest?
I'll let you go first, Alex. You're the senior seller here.
My own personal experience, or my experience of a leader.
Well, what have you experienced that's really resonated to you in your business practice?
Yeah. Well, let me draw upon an example that I have of a good leader in my career, because I can't say whether or not they were formally trained on personal change. Well, I probably can, actually, because you developed the world's first personal change model, so I know he hasn't been formally trained. But he, very much a leader that I admire and respect, and has been a mentor to me. And so, there were so many qualities, and there was a focus on change management as a process, And so I felt confident in, going through that change with him and the team, or climbing the mountain.
Yeah.
Is another analogy that I often like to use. But then there are, that's probably the only one, right? There are other leaders that I've worked with over the years that, perhaps don't have the same level of gravitas. I don't have the same level of confidence in, and therefore I'm questioning lots of other things.
Yeah.
So
true.
you're either on your own,
Mm-hmm.
or you're not getting the clarity that you need, whether that be the clarity of communication, the clarity of leading by example.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore it's easy to feel alone.
Yeah.
I guess I've got the advantage of having so many years of sales experience, Mark, as you've quite rightly pointed out. No, we sort of build this resilience, don't we, in sales, and we learn how to deal with change
Mm-hmm.
The hard way.
The hard way, and that's so, and it doesn't need to be that way. That's why I created Scared So What initially for my sales teams. So I did the research in a sales master's program for salespeople, because you think about the role of a salesperson. They have constant pressures that come from the leadership, the targets, hit these KPIs, hit, you have leaders that will constantly say, hit your numbers. And it absolutely just drove me insane, because you're really just showing you don't understand how sales works. If that's what your main focus is, just hit your numbers. But yet you also have the customer, the modern customer today, who almost always has an upper hand with technology, with AI, with different types of tools and systems to see and learn the products and services that we offer. Most oftentimes, our consumers know more than we do as a salespeople about many of our products and services. And so you have the salesperson who's caught in that ping pong back and forth between the company and the organization and the sales customers.
That point you make there was a big driver for me, a big personal driver for me. In developing the conversation operating system, because having been through burnout multiple times myself over the years, and feeling depression, at least a bout of depression at least once in that time, I always felt there was a better way. And there's a guy called Jeff Risley, who was the founder of the Sales Health Alliance. Would annually do research on the state of health in sales. And consistently over several years, he was seeing that the state of health was getting worse for salespeople and customer success folks. It's not just salespeople, because of those pressures. It's as high as, I think the last report he did, 75% of salespeople and customer success folks were feeling unhealthy, high levels of stress, and poor mental health. And so, I always felt that there's a better way. We're measuring the wrong things. We need to be doing things differently in order to empower people to develop conversations and relationships that will ultimately lead to what the business wants, which is pipeline and revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always been that disconnect.
Mark? So it sounds like we have a guest that we should be bringing on then, Alex.
The
gentleman that you're talking
about. Good.
Should be putting out a note.
An open invitation, right?
I think if you go back to these cases of dealing with mental health around sales teams and CS teams, Anthony put into the chat about hit your numbers. It's always the focus. Without understanding what's broken or out of place around, being able to hit your numbers. It really comes down to three pillars: leadership, change, and coaching. Because if you have a poor leader, it's going to drive the challenge of being able to have good mental health in your organization. Don't have coaches in the organization, same thing is going to happen, because change is a constant. No matter what, change is going to happen. So we need to enforce that. So I'm glad we're talking about that today. And it's a good segue into my section about predictable go-to-market. And we'll start with the number one piece of, what's the CEO's responsibility in any company? The number one responsibility is to lead, right? So leadership is on the forefront. We could start and finish evaluating CEOs based on that characteristic in and of itself. Are they a good leader? What does it mean to be a good leader? Is the company growing? Comes back to leadership. And when we then step down to coaching, one of the topics that I'd like to put on one of our next conversations: do we have fewer coaches today, fewer mentor-mentee relationships in the work environment because of the work from home lifestyle that we're all in now after 5 or 6 years post-COVID? You think back to who your coaches are, right? I can immediately think of 5 people who completely transformed, my career in enterprise selling, over the last 30 years. And there are components of who I am in that makeup from each one of them. But honestly, it's, mentors don't go out and pick a mentee just because they picked a name out of a hat. They watch them in their interactions. They want to know that they're a life learner. When I coach this person, will they learn? Do they want to learn more? And we're missing that. So it'd be an interesting study for somebody to do, to see whether or not, coaching is dropping down in the workplace because we're not around each other. But it really is about the go-to-market in a business. And the CEO owns go-to-market. The CEO understands and crafts the framework of go-to-market, but then it's the rest of the team across the organization that brings that go-to-market together. And the work that I'm doing today to help companies to establish or transform their go-to-market really becomes the pillar of, how that business is going to operate. When we look at companies today where change is constantly hitting them, if they don't have a structure in place, who are they selling to, right? That's a key piece. How are they taking care of their customers and looking at their customers, and how change impacts and impacts both of those categories? The company will start to go in 5 or 6 different directions. We establish the go-to-market. One of those 2 pillars that I'll talk about within go-to-market is your market analysis. What's your ICP, your ideal customer profile? Who are you selling to? And everybody in an outward or an inbound sales motion needs to realize that's who they're selling to. And if somebody's outside of that ICP, we need to recognize that. When you start to collect data, each one of these steps involves measurement, right? How am I collecting information about the progress that we're having across go-to-market? Is it working? Is it not working? I mentioned, are we going after the right prospects? The other piece of it is we've sold to customers based on a value proposition. If you buy X, your ROI will be Y, right? That's your value proposition. From the day that customer signs on the bottom line, the customer success team that Alex mentioned before should be focused on a line of communication with that customer about customer time to value. Because if we focus on that and hit those metrics, we'll have a happy customer if we stay in those guardrails. So when you think about the operation of a business, go-to-market becomes those guardrails across each component of the business. And if we coach everybody in the team on how to work through the process that we have in place, we won't have people that are confused about what's the next thing to do. Their competency level will be much higher, right? We've heard people in startups saying they're going to hire a force multiplier, somebody who could come in and do many jobs. If the rest of the team is lower on their competency level because they're not learning or because they're not being coached around a focused process for the business, those force multipliers are spending their time backfilling those gaps, which also then causes more change because that force multiplier isn't able to do what they were supposed to do. So if we just look at those 2 components within go-to-market, the business now has a stable process to say, these are the people we're selling to. This is how we manage customer time to value. These are 2 very important components to the most important health metric of a business, which is
Yeah.
revenue. And when revenue is where it's supposed to be and revenue is increasing, the health of the business and the health of the people is much better. We have more time, we have more people, we can do more things. If revenue is not hitting the numbers, what happens? Leadership makes cuts, right? And cuts leads to more change. There's change that happens to you, there's change that you're making, right? And if you're going to cut people because of that, that's going to cause more change. Ultimately, where I'm going with this is that if companies focus on making sure they have a strong go-to-market in place for their business, for their product, that becomes the guardrails for everybody in the organization to follow. And if we're all doing the same thing and we're collecting evidence and data, facts and evidence about the progress we're making, we can make an educated decision. Is there change that's needed in the go-to-market? And make that change at a time where everybody is coached on how do we make that change. And the leader, the CEO, then is the one out front explaining why the changes need to be made. And it's clear to everybody because everybody has seen the numbers. Everybody is seeing how the messaging is working, how the sales are going to different markets that are being measured. So it's clarity. But back to the leadership piece and coaching, I think some of the people that we're talking about and referencing without throwing their names out here, what are they bringing to the table? They're bringing experience and they're bringing insight, right? That's what makes a great leader, right? If we have that, I think it's hard to be a good mentor if you don't have experience or insight. So predictable go-to-market establishes the foundation for the business. And as times change, as external forces change, internal forces change, if your go-to-market is established, you can make the changes to the go-to-market and mark your next phase of growth based on the changes that you've made. So you have to start there. Otherwise, the business is going in whatever direction anybody wants to take it.
Great insights. Thank you, Mark, for sharing all of that. And I think you've just given us so much that we can unpack over a course of a few sessions here together as well, too. Right off the bat, from mind, I would love to dive deeper into coaching and, what style of coaching, who are we coaching? What it's happening during the coaching process. Is coaching being prescribed or is coaching being volunteered? Is the recipient willing and wanting the coaching? There's so many elements to be uncovered within that own very small section, and then we have leadership to unpack as well too. So, wow, so much to share within the go-to-market function. So I really thank you for that, and that's your expertise. All right, so
Yes.
over to Alex. Alex, I think you're going to share and just give us an introduction on the conversation operating session for go-to-market enablement. Is that right?
Yeah, but what I thought I would do is just start off with diving into the importance of creating meaningful conversations and why it's so important. Unless you're and we're talking B2B, of course, and unless you're selling a low value self-service type B2B solution, then everything starts with a conversation. Literally everything. You cannot build a relationship without a conversation with someone, whether it's in person or online. You don't develop pipeline, you don't sign renewals, you don't develop relationships, you don't start new partnerships
without conversation. Yeah, absolutely.
And they're potentially all of the external KPIs or commercial objectives. Internal transformation, it starts with a conversation and communication. And so I think firstly, when I talk to organizations that say they have various problems, whether it's pipeline or revenue, ultimately what they have is a conversation scarcity problem.
Yeah.
And so the conversation operating system is really designed to, to do two things. Firstly, it's designed to help GTM teams develop or create conversations with their target audience.
Mm-hmm.
Once they've created those conversations with their target audience, it's then about having meaningful conversations.
Yeah.
And so on one side, it's about, how do we show up more effectively on social? In a world where email and the phone is yielding diminishing returns.
Yeah, it's true.
What choice do we have? Well, we could spend a lot of money and attend events. We know that's, that creates another challenge,
Yeah.
rising customer acquisition costs. We don't all have the luxury of having deep pockets. And so again, what choice do you have? Well, show up more effectively on social, on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
I think for most companies, they make the mistake of taking their existing sales strategy and dropping it on LinkedIn and wondering why they're not able to engage their target
Mm-hmm.
audience effectively.
Or their marketing strategy, right? All of their product and systems, they just dump it. And then
Exactly.
everybody shares the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. Sequences
Yeah.
or automation or corporate content that doesn't engage.
Yeah.
And Alex, I think it's good for not just our audience here, but for any audience to start to put into their mind what is a conversation, right? Because we all have them in our day-to-day life, right? So if I try to do something through an email or through a social channel, and then I read it back to myself, does that sound like a conversation? Would I ever say that
Is
to
it
somebody
real?
who walked up?
Yeah.
Or if they bumped into me and I was going to have a conversation, what's this?
Or is it just Chat GPT and you just copy pasted, right?
Yeah.
Which is not real.
That's right. Right. Well, it's unreal.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah.
It's unreal. But anyway, I think
Yeah.
helping people to visualize the conversation brings us to the next point that I know you're going to talk about, which is building your personal brand. Because when we do meet somebody in public and we're going to start a conversation, there's a whole bunch of things about that person that we're already taking in before we ever have a word with them. How they're dressed, how they're acting, where they are. Are they at a trade show booth, or are they at the end of an aisle, or are they at a coffee shop? There's all these different pieces, and that goes to your point about building a personal brand, because that impacts the beginning of the conversation dramatically.
Yeah. So important. I mean, and building a personal brand is just a few words, but it can mean different things to different people, and so it really.
Well, and Alex, that goes beyond what you're teaching. Goes beyond just social. I think of how many salespeople, what they're taught to do is to prepare their agenda before they even speak to a customer or consumer. They have a full page agenda of what they want to talk about, but there's no room in that agenda for the customer to speak, or the relationship as you're talking, or the conversation. It's completely one-sided. So this extends far beyond, and we have generations that have, forgive me, I'm going to say it, we have generations that have been brought up like this with a phone, just face to face to the phone. Conversations are foreign unless they're digital. So I think that what you're sharing is so valid for anyone and everybody to start learning.
Yeah. That, personal brand, developing your personal brand is really the starting point. I mean, okay, let me just take a step back. If there's one thing you could do before developing your personal brand, that's do what Mark was saying. Identify your ICP, create your target audience, have a very clear idea where you need to be spending your time so that you maximize your return on effort when you do develop your personal brand.
Yeah.
And then be very clear in your own mind, what are those things that you want to be known for, so that you can appear as buyer-centric as possible. What are those things that align with your core values as an organization, that align with your target audience, so you can be buyer-centric, but also what are the one or two things that are core to yourself as an individual? your own values and beliefs,
Yeah.
the things that make you the authentic person that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those things that really create the connection with your buyers on LinkedIn, on social, because people don't believe what you have to say until they feel like they know you, like
Well,
you, or can trust you.
And that's what you're saying, Alex, is you actually want me to show people who I am in conversations. Is that right?
Exactly. That's how we build relationships.
You might be scared to actually meet me, but there we go. I'm scared, so what? We'll see how that goes. But yeah, you're so right. You see so many salespeople. They'll take the tools from their marketing teams and divisions or their sales supervisors and leaders, and they'll just post that throughout. And if you multiply that times how many sellers are inside the business, you're going to see that repetition so often, but you don't see who the person is.
Yeah.
And I think what you're trying to tell us is that people buy from people, not from marketing teams and marketing divisions. So we need to find a better way.
We do. And then when you get the conversation, you've done the hard bit. Most salespeople, maybe that's too big a statement to make. Some salespeople, at least, they'll go into pitch mode.
Yep. Well, yeah.
I need to tell this person how great we are. I need to tell them all of the success stories or the relevant success stories that we have, instead of really thinking about how do they build rapport first, and then how do they steer that conversation, or how do they help that individual, understand the value that you might bring them through questioning as opposed to telling.
Yeah. Well, and there is some evidence to back that statement up, Alex. Dr. Philip Squire is the CEO of the Consolidate Sales Business School here in London. And his initial doctoral research, he went to businesses around the world to find out what percentage of salespeople are actually effective at their roles. And this is maybe 15, 20 years ago. And the global response was less than 10% of people, salespeople, are actually effective at their jobs. Now, he's just redone that survey. And he just had his global sales meeting at the London Stock Exchange last week, and he revealed the evidence of that. We've gotten a little better. It's down to 30%. Less than 30% of salespeople are still effective at their jobs. But that means 70% still are doing exactly what you're saying. They're just telling people what to do. It's transactional at best.
How are they measuring that? Do you know? Is it
straight for the customer? Yeah, they're asking the voice of the customer. So CEOs, the C-suite, the leadership teams, asking them directly percentages of number of people and how many people call on them, how many salespeople are calling on them, and what percentages of them actually contribute to the success of their business, and what percentages of them don't add any value whatsoever. And that's something we don't take into consideration. If I'm a business selling phones, how many salespeople are calling on me each day, and how many of them are adding value to my business versus they're just taking time away. And Mark, I think you know about this as well.
But the point that we're talking about here comes back to change. The world has changed. No more phones, no more emails. Yes, in person is very strong, but it costs a lot of money. So how do we leverage getting out there and the conversation operating system? I encourage everybody who's listening here to go to Alex's site. There's a lot of numbers that are available, facts and evidence that he's been tracking over the last 4+ years on the value of this approach. But more importantly, there are statistics about the number of senior executives that are making their buying decisions about who they're going to talk to before they ever talk to anybody. And if they're looking on social to come up with that, you better be building your personal brand. You better be, focusing your company's message to those personas that are the people that are out there determining who. And no different than go to market. What I'm talking about is a significant amount of change to most organizations. It's organizational change. It's change about how they do the sales, marketing, customer success, and managing the revenue operations of measurement. It's a lot of change. And what comes with change, as a good segue here for you, Grant, a lot of fear of change. So what do we do about that?
And Alex, I have to echo what Mark said. I think what we need to do is one episode, do a show fully on the conversation operating system, and actually talk it through so that people understand what the services are that you provide. it's so needed and it's so necessary, you
Yeah.
know, and would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely. I'd love to
Okay.
do that.
Very good. Very good.
Let me
Well,
leave you with one
yeah, go ahead.
question.
Go ahead.
More for any revenue leaders listening. So if your revenue model depends on people changing how they think or act, then your operating model needs to focus on how you create conversations that make that change possible.
Mhm.
Think about that from an internal perspective within your organization, but then also think about that from an external perspective, because if you're selling a solution to an organization, then the buyer is also thinking, oh my God, how much change are we going to have to go through to implement this solution
Yeah,
that's being sold to us?
so true.
Yeah.
So very true. Very good for us to focus on. Mark, you were going to say?
No, I was just going to say, I think if we can change to how do we deal with the change and the fear of change, that'd be good timing here as we only have 14 minutes
Perfect.
left.
Thank you for that. We have a lot we can talk about.
Yeah.
Alex, would you do me a favor and would you put our websites in the chat so that people could follow along at scaredsowhat.com if they wanted to learn about personal change? And also, could you put your website for the conversation operating system so people could learn more information about that?
Yeah.
Mark, do you have your website up or your LinkedIn? I think we can leave everybody with our LinkedIns.
I have just my LinkedIn would be
Perfect.
good because I have this fear of change about building a website.
It's
that I gotta
coming. It's
get myself
coming.
through.
So we do encourage all of you listening to follow along with us. Mark Sabatini is on LinkedIn. I'm Dr. Grant Van Albrick. I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, and Alex Abbott. But Alex will drop our websites into the chat for you to see as well, too. And, you know, as we're talking about go to market with Mark and we're talking about sales and it's, you know, in the changing strategies and the conversation operating systems of where we need to go, there is one thing that really ties all of this together. And as Mark rightfully said, it's change. And so, why did I create Scared So What? Well, let me just tell you. Back in 2018, within my organization, I went into the world's first master's program for sales. And that's here in London with Middlesex University and the Consalia Sales Business School. And we learned all about how to sell in modern times, which is why I met with Alex to bring in and to upskill our sales teams in the modern sales abilities with, you know, social and media and the conversation operating system. So we built all of that. But one thing that I had to learn was about change and how do you lead transformation. And this is something I often ask CEOs and chief C-suite personnel. Have you ever been taught how to achieve transformation within business? Most people say no. Have you ever been taught how to manage personal change for yourself? Almost every single person I've met over the last 10 years has said no. And there's the reason why so much change fails. If we're at the C-suite and we don't know how to lead that, what we're doing is we're counting on the 2 people in HR, and I make that up, could be 1, or maybe it's a team of 5. It could be the change management and project management teams, and their responsibility is to take our leadership directives and process the change throughout organizations. Okay? That is transactional at best. There is no way you're including every single employee within the organization. We're not asking them how they feel about it. We're not asking them what ideas they have about it. So when I learned about these organizational change models, it's not that they were bad. It's that there was one thing that was constantly missing, and that is you. So I asked my professors, I said, where's the change model for me as an individual? Can you accept change? Yes. Can you reject change? Yes. Organizational change models don't allow for you to reject, and that is not realistic. Okay. So there's a missing element. And that's why I created Scared So What. It's the world's first bespoke personal change model that allows you to accept change, to reject change, and also to be stuck in the middle with, you know, indifference, which happens so much. So many times we want people to tell us what to do. And that means we haven't done the work ourselves. We haven't reflected on what it means to us. And Scared So What helps you to do just that. So scared is the process about uncovering your feelings. How do you feel about the change? I want you to think about it and reflect on it so that you're not making an assumption, you're making an information-based decision. And then so what? So what can you do about it? What's your strategy? What options can you do? Do you have a way forward? Do you have hope or know how your plan will work? What actions will you take? And finally, how do you take ownership? These are questions every single leader in every business around the world would love to know the answers to. And if you actually teach this to your employees, then you're no longer teaching change resistance. You're teaching change readiness. That is the key to transformation. Okay. And so that's what I have met and partnered with Alex and Mark and aligned with that in transformational leadership, coaching. That's why these 3 pillars are so important to me, because we can do this better and we can do work and leadership and change in a much better fashion when we start to equip our people for change and we actually start to lead with the values that our people expect of us. And that's the crust of my work. And Mark, I wanted to invite you. Did you have anything to share on what I've shared here today?
I mean, personally, it definitely connected with me the day that I was introduced to you by Alex, because I was going through some significant change professionally, change that was being put on me that I didn't feel I was ready for, and I didn't feel our business was ready for it. And I needed to have a path to work through that, to do that critical thinking and go through how to deal with the change. Because otherwise, you tend to, let it pull you back and hold you back because you're indifferent or rejecting the change. I think everybody can relate to that when they've had something that they've rejected. Other people have religion that they go to for critical thinking. Other people have different tools at their disposal. But for me, learning about Scared So What and applying it to myself was a great help. So thank you for that. And I encourage everybody to learn more about what you've
I
built.
appreciate that. And thank you. And Alex, you and I connected initially because you thought that this should be a pillar in your business. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can. Firstly, let me just say a big shout to David Santanier. So there are some comments that are coming in that aren't feeding through to our restream.
Okay.
So I'm on the LinkedIn. So hi David, great to see you. And Anthony Greenfield, I know he dropped into the chat, but also thank you, Anthony, for your questions and comments.
Very good.
I do have a couple of questions for you, Grant.
Sure.
So, why do so many initiatives fail when they don't consider the individual first?
Yeah. And the research shows why so much change fails is because we don't include the individuals. So you have to think about that. In your companies and organizations, typically change is initiated by the C-suite. You then hand it over to human resources or to communications to type it up and get the message out. You might have project management people who will process the change through the organization. And so you're using organizational change management methodologies, which are not bad. They're fine. And they're actually very, very detailed in what they're doing, but they're missing one critical element, and that is the individual. So it's a foundation of transactional leadership. We're telling people, and often you'll hear leaders say, well, let me just explain what's in it for you. But what we're missing out on is individual perception. And every single person has it in the world. How do you perceive the change, right? And when you don't take that into consideration, you're destined to fail.
So the figure that you gave at the beginning of the call, the show, the 340
billion.
Is that UK or is that global?
That's just UK. So the research shows us here that 340 billion is the calculated cost of failed change and engagement within organizations. And that is in public and private sectors. And it happens every year. Now that number grows exponentially when you look at digital transformation and the failure rates globally. That number skyrockets to 2.3 trillion. And the author that led that research is an amazing man, Brian Harkin, and he's got a great book out called Digital Transformation to Digital Acceleration using the Galapagos framework. And I actually spoke with him many times, and he had said that, Grant, that number is actually very conservative. By Q1 of 2026, he expects that to be 3 trillion.
So with your model in mind, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. You may not have an exact answer, but what How much of that 340 billion do you think Scared So What's model could prevent
Yeah.
from being lost?
Think of it this way. Even if we just did 1%, if every company could contribute this model and did 1%, that's 3.4 billion.
Yeah.
The numbers are humongous. I'll give you a good case scenario, a little case scenario. I was working with a global organization here in the UK, which everybody knows. I can't really say their name, but I'm sure you receive your mail somehow from these lovely people, and they're phenomenal. So I'll just leave it there. But I was working with one department within the organization. They're huge, 170,000 employees, but just one division. And I was told at the very beginning of a big change process, if we received a 25% adoption rate, we would be very happy. Well, at the end of our processes, when we did it together, when we did the change, I certified the team, the leadership team in the program, which our program is accredited by CPD, ITAL, and fully endorsed by the Oxford Review. So we transferred the knowledge first, and then we launched the app technology. We witnessed a 68% adoption rate. So right out the bat, something that the company, which is over 500 years old, had never experienced. And so you tell me, this is just early days, but it does work. It absolutely works. And if you can just all commit to including the knowledge into our organization about personal change management, because if you do personal change management first as your foundational layer, then you know where everybody stands, which is beautiful. That's inclusion. You know who's for the change and who's not for the change. For those people that are for the change, use them as adopters. For the people who are not for the change, that's where coaching and leadership comes into play. What were they missing? We often find through use of the technology that they didn't have all the information because their perception of what was communicated is flawed, right? So that's how you can bring people back on board. And that's how you reduce the cost of failed change, because those people could turn into attrition. And that is cost of failed change as well, too. If you save just one person that you want to keep on board, then guess what? You're reducing the cost of failed change.
Yeah. There's a whole show to be had around how you quantify that, but with 2 minutes.
And we can calculate it. If you go on my website, scaredsowhat.com, there is a free calculator. So if you're brave enough as a C-suite leader, you actually could go in and calculate what your cost of failed change is today. And let's definitely have a discussion on that.
As we wrap up here in these last couple of minutes, I think anybody can relate to this. Just like we talked about what's a poor leader, I think everybody's had their experiences. When you think of a failed organizational change or failed initiative inside any business that you've worked at, was the people not accepting or the people rejecting the change a significant cause of the failure?
Yeah.
That's really the point.
Yeah.
So if you can break through that, and that goes to organizational change for go-to-market, that goes for most
sales,
people who don't want to
everything.
build their personal brand on social. They don't know how to do it. They don't want to do it. They're shot right out. That's one of your biggest hurdles you have to get across. It's all about the fear of change.
And we're not talking about the big elephant in the room in the discussions today around the world, AI. How many times have you hear people that are scared of AI? But again, and people are saying it. AI is not going to steal your job. It's the person who learns AI. That's who's going to steal your job.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great. This was a wonderful first episode.
Well, guys, I want to thank you so much. It's great to have you both here. Alex, for being my first and first certified member. Alex, for joining us on the team as well. And Mark coming on certified with our teams as well. To have you both as co-hosts is just amazing. There's so much to share. And so we hope that you find value in this discussion in the Dr. Grant Show, where we talk about Scared So What? We talk about leadership. We talk about coaching. We talk about so many things. We're going to have some great leaders coming up in 2026 to join us. Joshua Smith is the CEO of CRO Connected here in the United Kingdom. And Warren Zenna, I believe, is going to join us. He's the CEO of CRO, what is it? Forgive me. CRO Collective. That's right, in America. Yeah, so two great like-minded leaders that are hitting the same topics from different continents. So I can't wait to have both of them on the show. It's going to be nice to have them. And we hope if you're curious, if you'd like to be on the show with us, feel free to drop a message to Alex, myself, or Mark, and reach out to us. Let's have a discussion and let's
Please.
get you on the show.
Yeah. Looking forward to the next one.
There you go.
Yeah.
Final words, Alex and Mark.
Right on time.
Right on time.
Sounds great. Well, tune in for more. Follow us all on LinkedIn, and we can't wait to have your comments and continue the discussions. For now, thanks for joining us on the Dr. Grant Show. I'm Dr. Grant. There's Alex and Mark.